You've probably heard of Adam and Eve from the Bible and might know a bit about their story, like their sin, their children, and their descendants. Recently, many people have been wondering, what language did Adam and Eve speak with each other, their kids, and their grandkids, especially since Adam lived for such a long time? We made this video to dive into this fascinating question. Don't forget to hit like, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with anyone else who might be curious about the same thing. What language did Adam and Eve use? People often talk about their descendants, including Cain's descendants, known as the Cainites, and Seth's descendants, the Sethites. These two groups are often seen in different lights, one good, the other not so much. It's interesting to see how their stories overlap over time and how they all became corrupt after sin entered the world with Adam and Eve. This idea of a fall from grace because of Adam's original sin, which all of humanity shares, is a common theme. Adam and Eve's family raises lots of questions, especially regarding their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. This topic sparks a lot of curiosity among people who wonder about the descendants and various family lines that came from Adam and Eve. After all, Adam and Eve were the first humans and the ancestors of all the diverse races and ethnic groups we see in the world today. A common question I get is about the language Adam and Eve spoke in the Garden of Eden, and what languages their descendants, from both Cain's and Seth's lines, used. These languages were still in use even after the flood and only ceased altogether during the decline of humanity at the Tower of Babel. The only thing the Bible tells us about this language is that it was given by God, and it was the same language that God spoke, or maybe it was the language angels used to communicate among themselves. God used this language to talk to Adam, who then might have taught it to Eve, or perhaps Eve was born already knowing this language. There are several theories about what this original language could have been. In this video, I'll go over some of these theories and I'm eager to read everyone's thoughts on them in the comments. At the end of the video, I'll discuss what the Bible actually says about this language and what it might have been. Let's dive into the various biblical interpretations of the original language spoken by Adam and Eve, starting with the Hebrew language and its connection to their language. Some scholars who study the Bible believe that the language of Adam and Eve continued to be spoken until the time of Moses and the Israelites, and they think this language was Phoenician Hebrew. However, there's debate about whether this idea is strongly supported by the Bible. Hebrew is an ancient language, around 3,400 years old, and it evolved from older Canaanite languages. In the Old Testament, it's simply referred to as the language of Canaan, as mentioned in the book of Isaiah. Classifying it as a Canaanite language creates some confusion because it suggests Hebrew came from Canaan, not Mesopotamia, where Abraham originated. Abraham came from Ur of the Chaldeans, a place where languages like Sumerian and Akkadian were spoken. This topic is often debated among scholars discussing biblical linguistics and the origins of the world's first language, with some even suggesting it could have been Hebrew. Besides Hebrew, many scholars, including Jewish rabbis who rely on ancient traditions and texts, firmly believe that the first language of humanity, spoken by Adam, Eve, and even Noah, was ancient Aramaic. They suggest that Aramaic was the language God used to communicate with Adam and Eve and that they then passed this language down to their descendants. Aramaic is a very old Semitic language, similar to Arabic and with some overlaps with ancient Hebrew. The Zohar, a significant text in Jewish tradition, states that Adam and Eve spoke Aramaic and that this was their original language. So, while some point to Hebrew as the primordial language, there's also a strong case for Aramaic. There's even a third theory worth considering, offering another angle. This theory involves a language known among some rabbis and Jews as Lashon HaKodesh, or the holy or sanctified language, which is thought to be a mix of ancient Aramaic, Hebrew, and possibly ancient Phoenician. This blend of languages is believed to be the actual language spoken by Adam and Eve. In addition to the theories about Hebrew and Aramaic, there are other linguistic ideas proposed by various scholars, both Jewish and non-Jewish, about the language Adam and Eve might have spoken. Some suggest that it could have been Akkadian. Indeed, The Akkadian language is considered by some as a potential candidate for being the language of Adam and Eve. Others believe that the ancient Sumerian language might have been the original language. This is partly because Akkadian is one of the oldest documented languages, with records that are the earliest known in the world. Similarly, the ancient records of the Sumerian language support the idea that it too could have been the first language. So, while some theorists lean towards Akkadian as the primary candidate, others suggest that Sumerian could be the answer. Alongside these suggestions, there are additional theories and interpretations about what the language of Adam and Eve could have been. Over time, many scholars have explored this topic, leading to a variety of theories. One interesting theory is that the original language might have been ancient Egyptian, referred to in Egypt as Kemet or Comet. Proponents of this view believe that ancient Egyptian was the first language of humanity, maintained over the centuries by the ancient Egyptians themselves. However, as other groups like the Hyksos, who spoke Aramaic, Ugaritic, and Phoenician, occupied Egypt, the language began to change. Later, conquerors such as the Greeks and the Romans further influenced and altered the linguistic landscape of the region. These numerous influences and occupations led to the evolution and eventual loss of ancient Egyptian as a spoken language. Supporters of this theory argue that ancient Egyptian could be the primordial language, much like the arguments for Akkadian and Sumerian. This is partly because Egyptian hieroglyphs, like cuneiform and Sumerian script, are among the oldest writing systems in the world. Thus, some believe there's a possibility that ancient Egyptian was the original language of humanity. Additionally, some scholars propose the idea of a Proto-Indo-European language, or an ancestor of it, as the original language. However, these theories are mostly speculative and don't have solid evidence backing them. It's important to note that none of these theories are supported by biblical scriptures. The Bible and other ancient texts do not specify that the language of Adam and Eve was Hebrew, Akkadian, Aramaic, or Egyptian. In essence, these ideas are theoretical and lack concrete proof. Most scholars and the consensus suggest that the original language spoken by Adam and Eve is known as the Adamic language, named after Adam because it's considered the first language. This Adamic language is not Aramaic, Hebrew, Akkadian, Sumerian, Egyptian, or any other known language. It is sometimes also called the language of Noah, the Noetic language, or the language of Enoch. While there is a mention of an Enochian language, it doesn't specifically refer to the language of Adam and Eve but is one of the terms used to describe the language they spoke. In the Bible, this language is also referred to as the language of angels. The Apostle Paul mentions it in the New Testament, saying that if he spoke both the language of men and angels but didn't have love, it would mean nothing. This language is thus considered a heavenly language. What we understand about the disappearance of this language from earth covers the time from Adam to the Tower of Babel. After the Tower of Babel, humans, who were descendants of Noah, started speaking different languages. This was done to create confusion among them at that time. That's why Genesis, chapter 11, talks about the confusion of tongues during the story of the Tower of Babel. The word Babel in Hebrew means confusion, and in ancient Akkadian, it means gate of God. From the biblical account, we learn that there was divine intervention where each group descended from Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who were tasked with repopulating the world, was given its language. These languages varied among the different branches and sub-branches of the descendants of Japheth, Ham, and Shem, and included some unique languages that God specifically created for the people building the Tower of Babel. Due to the bad intentions in their hearts, God diversified the languages dramatically to foil their plans, causing widespread confusion where no one could understand each other anymore. From then on, each group was scattered to different regions of the planet, leading to the variety of languages we know today. The original language of Adam and Eve, known as Adamic, was taken away from the earth by God himself, and replaced by various other languages and dialects for Noah's descendants. This happened during Noah's time, not during the eras of Adam, Seth, or Enoch when Noah's sons and grandsons were able to build the Tower of Babel. Thus, God removed the original heavenly language and introduced a diversity of languages to the people. In short, the original language spoken by Adam and Eve was Adamic, the language of angels, the very language of God. However, it's important to understand that this language isn't Hebrew, Aramaic, Akkadian, or any other known language today. It was a unique language removed from the earth by divine intervention. Thanks to everyone who has watched this video so far. If you know anyone interested in the linguistic mysteries of the ancient Bible, please share this video with them. May everyone be under God's protection. See you soon.